What's up, everybody? Welcome back to our newest edition of the CruitCast. Joined by Cole Patterson. I'm Jason Sukamel. Cole, we kind of teased it last week, man. We got a commitment. We can talk about last weekend's commitment. We got what we feel like will be more commitments coming up for Texas. So you wrote about it. This recruiting momentum for Texas kind of restarted itself. So we'll dive into all that, but let's do some housekeeping here first. First off, everybody, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. We keep growing this channel, and it's been beneficial for us. If you certainly like the video, subscribe to the channel. That helps all of us. And hey, maybe the biggest news of the day, Cole, Prime Shrimp, our sponsor, excuse me, you see them up there at the top, PRIMESHRIMP.com, $20 off your first order, promo code OrangeBloods. Cole, we got word literally right before we started recording this, Prime Shrimp is releasing a new flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And the best news, they're going to send some to me and you to sample. So like my mouth is salivating just talking about it. So yeah, man. So lemon and cracked pepper shrimp. And I'm just going to read. It says it's a bright mix of real lemon zest and black pepper plus garlic and herbs. Makes the natural lemon cracked pepper shrimp easy to incorporate into any meal. And we all know this is delicious, nutritious, no fat, low carb, high protein, cooks perfectly from frozen. No need to thaw it out or, very little cleanup. So man, you talk lemon pepper, you put garlic, any of that, and I'm going to eat pretty much anything with that stuff on it. So, yeah, shout out to Prime Shrimp. Looking forward to trying that. So, Cole, let's start with, it feels like it was forever ago. It was Friday, correct? Yeah, Friday. I'm getting my days mixed up. It was last Friday that Darian Galette, the linebacker out of Teague, the Rivals 100 linebacker, gives Texas a commitment. We pretty much knew it was coming, Cole, ever since he visited took his official visit back in June. Texas A&M got in there a little bit and made it a little interesting, but we never really wavered on our stance that he was going to be coming to Texas. But big pickup for Texas, especially after missing on Anthony Hill. They could not afford to miss on Darian Galette. So your thoughts on Galette making it official and making his announcement on Friday for Texas?
Yeah, like I said, obviously a big commitment. You couldn't really miss out on him after already missing out on Anthony Hill, but really good player. He's a 3-sport athlete, track, basketball, football, great size. Looks like $1 million, and huge pickup. He can play some linebacker, potentially let him rush a passer, whatever they want to do. I feel like he can, excel in that. Obviously, the big thing's the knee injury, but assuming he's able to bounce back from that, I think it's a really good pickup, and he could be a really good player at Texas.
Yeah, he's young. I mean, those, anytime you had a knee injury like that, whatever, 15, 20 years ago, it was like, oh my gosh, that's a 2-year recovery. Well, that's not the case anymore. I mean, he could very well come in next. I think the plan is for him to graduate in December. So he would enroll in Texas in January. He won't be healthy by January, but he's already had the surgery, I was told by someone close to him. I think he was supposed to get off crutches literally last week or something. So, he's well on his way. I mean, he could be a contributor as early as a true freshman if he continues to progress, at a pretty steady pace. You mentioned it, man. Like Anthony Hill commits to Texas A&M a couple weeks ago or a few weeks ago, whenever it was. Think about this class for Texas, Cole. If they miss on Darian Galette, I mean, they got a couple linebacker commitments, but you miss on Galette. Braylon Shelby ends up going to USC on Saturday, the day after Darian's commitment. So Jeff Ketchum and I from Orange Bloods were talking about this. How big of a get is it? And I was like, hey, he's a great player, but it's almost like, yeah, he's a great player and he'll be a really good asset for that defense. But it's almost, to me, in a weird way, it's almost Texas couldn't afford to miss him as much as they could. It was a luxury to get him, right? Because if they don't get him, their linebacker class in this 2023 cycle looks a lot different.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you can't really miss out on all these top defensive guys, especially at the linebacker position with Shelby and Anthony Hill. You had to get at least one, and we'll see what happens down the road with the other two if Texas can make a push for Shelby. But yeah, you at least had to get one in the boat and go from there. He's a guy that can play multiple roles. He seems like he could complement Samaje Burrell pretty well as well. Burrell's kind of the thumper in the middle, and whereas Galette can play on the outside, can rush a passer. But yeah, huge get. I mean, just obviously when you lose Anthony Hill to A&M and Shelby goes out of state, like you said, you kind of just had to almost put a Band-Aid on recruiting, so to speak. At least at that position, you couldn't really afford to miss out. And you kind of restarts the momentum, and we'll see if Texas can capitalize on that.
Texas has Leona Lafau, the linebacker out of Hawaii that's committed.
Mhm.
But, it's not a position on the current roster that has a lot of depth, and most of their upperclassmen guys, I mean, most of their talent, I guess, or their contributors are upperclassmen or seniors. DeMarvion Overshawn, Tucker Dorsey, the transfer, he'll be a 1-year player. Last year they recruited, I'm looking, Travell Johnson signed, and Derek Brown. I don't know if either of those are true linebackers. Travell's a guy that can kind of be a hybrid safety for you. Derek Johnson might go into an edge. So they need to stockpile linebackers. Missing Anthony Hill was big. And you said it, Galette could be an edge player too. But what I've been told from like his high school coaches or long term, they do envision him, Texas envisions him as being a true linebacker for that UT defense. So big pickup there. Hey, he'll bolster the talent. I mean, he's a Rivals 100 player, one of the top-rated defensive commitments Texas has. But it was also, as importantly, I mean, you couldn't afford to let that guy slip through the cracks, much less go to your in-state rival, Texas A&M. So,
yeah, they made things interesting towards the end. So, if you can secure that commitment, that's huge in itself.
Yeah, and he's a guy probably that, like we've said about Braylon Shelby and USC. USC's probably going to have to work to keep Shelby. Well, the fact that Galette was kind of back and forth there towards the end, and like you said, A&M made it interesting, that tells me that Texas is going to have to work hard to continue to recruit Darian Galette aggressively and not let him waver, not let him have any second thoughts. So, and this staff does a good job with that. So I think they'll be fine there. So Galette happens on Friday. We mentioned Shelby Saturday goes to USC. Cole, as we record this, it's Tuesday, lunchtime-ish on Tuesday. We're expecting big news on Wednesday evening. Cedric Baxter, the running back out of Orlando, Edgewater, Florida, that you and I have talked about, he's going to announce, I think it's 6:30 Central Time, if I'm not mistaken, 7:30 Eastern Time at his school, 6:30 Central Time for most of our viewers probably. But, Baxter's down to Texas A&M, Miami, and Florida. I still feel really, really good about it being Texas. I think a lot of people would be disappointed, would be shocked, and probably would have wasted a lot of their efforts and their time in getting things ready for this one. So we feel like it's going to be Texas. Cole, your thoughts a little more than 24 hours before Cedric Baxter announces.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it seemed like it wasn't too long ago when, Ruben Owens committed to Louisville, and Texas fans were freaking out about who that second running back in the class would be with Trey Wisner. And, they got Cedric Baxter on campus, and ever since then, they really surged in its recruitment. Alabama was a factor at one point. And, they got Justice Haynes and Richard Young in that class. So kind of opened the door for Texas to make even more of a move and kind of secure things there. And it seems like they've taken advantage of that. They're potentially pulling a guy out of Orlando, Florida that has Miami and Florida offers if they want. They really want Cedric Baxter to keep them in that state. A&M hosted him on a visit as well after Texas did. So hot commodity, a guy that, a lot of services have him pretty high, and I think he'll probably get a big bump in the Rivals rankings update as well. Just big get, and you can't really ask for too much from a second running back in this class with Cedric Baxter. So if they're able to close things out in 24 hours, a little over 24 hours from now, that's going to be a huge bonus to the class and kind of really give Sarkisian another really big-time weapon on offense.
Baxter's kind of interesting, man. I don't have his timeline in front of me, but there was a time where he listed Alabama as his favorite. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, like a week later, I was like, oh, Texas is surging out of nowhere in this one. And, Alabama gets their running backs, and then Ruben Owens. Like, I'd have to look at the timeline, but it was almost serious. It was like the day Ruben committed to Louisville. Mm-hmm. I swear we started hearing, hey, man, I think Texas is going to get Cedric Baxter. And then his visit happens. And, ever since then, like, I've hit, like, on my recruiting board, man, 70% is pretty high for me. And I think I've had Baxter, I don't even know, but I'm probably at 70 or higher. I've always thought, Cole, there was a chance, I think of Miami, okay? Miami's recruiting pretty well. Yeah. They're throwing around all this crazy NIL money. Not the prospects, but prospects know it's coming if they wind up at Miami. So, A&M doing, whatever they do to recruit well. So I've always thought there was a chance maybe A&M or Miami might be able to kind of muddy the waters on this one prior to Baxter's announcement to what I think is going to be Texas, but it hasn't happened, man. He has stayed rock solid behind the scenes with his strong interest in Texas. I fully expect that to stay true for the next, whatever it is, 30 hours. Now, the key to that, I've had college coaches tell me out-of-state commitments, those dudes you have to continue to recruit as if they're uncommitted. So if Cedric Baxter picks Texas tomorrow, like we're both strongly expecting, Miami is not going away. Florida is not going away. Texas A&M's probably not going away. So you might have to withstand some anxious moments there. But the good news for Texas fans is, Baxter's been pretty locked in with his strong interest to Texas for the better or over a month, probably a month and a half now. So there's a good reason to think he'll wind up being a part of this class. So that's tomorrow, Cole. Then we may have a little bit of a lull for 4 or 5 days. Then we get to Monday of next week. So 6 days from now, we're going to go ahead and talk about Jordan Matthews, because we probably won't record another CruitCast before that. Maybe we will. Who knows? But Jordan Matthews is going to announce on Monday the 15th. I've kind of been teasing that one for the last couple of weeks. Well, he came out last week and publicly announced August 15th is his commitment day. Texas, Michigan, Tennessee. Again, we're kind of echoing each other again, but looks good for Texas there, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I kind of always got the impression that Jordan Matthews really liked Texas. From the first time I saw him on campus. He was on campus last July, late July, and ever since then he seemed to really speak highly of Texas. He kept coming back for multiple, junior day events. He was back on campus a couple weeks ago. So late July again. So he's been a consistent visitor to Texas. His dad played at LSU. Alabama was coming hard after him. Michigan and Tennessee are involved, but Texas seems to be closing in on getting another big win out of Louisiana. They already obviously have Archie Manning in the boat. Derek Williams got him committed. Will Randall is also committed, so it can get them a fourth pretty big win out of that state. And speaks volumes about Terry Joseph and the staff being able to potentially land one of the he's a borderline top 100 guy. Can play corner, can play a little bit everywhere. So really good player. But yeah, we feel confident Texas will be the pick.
It was interesting, Cole, when he came in for the pool party. What was it, the 28th of July? So not this last Thursday, but the one before. I was talking to him as he was getting ready to leave, and he said to me, he goes, "Yeah, this is my 4th trip to Austin." I was like, "Man, I thought it was like a 6th or 7th." Seriously, It feels like it's been more than 4. It seems like every time they have something, he makes that trip in. Well, at that time, he told me the week prior to that visit, "Hey, I'm going to take an Alabama visit week 1 of the season. I'm going to take a Texas visit week 2 of the season when they're playing Alabama, actually. Those would be official visits." And then he would decide a week after that. Well, he's still taking the Texas visit. Alabama's now not even in his top 3. Now it's Michigan and Tennessee in there with Texas. So you just got to read the tea leaves. Sometimes these guys will come out and tell us, okay, yeah, the pick's going to be Texas. And we always try to get that confirmation. But I didn't even ask Jordan Matthews, man, off the record, "Hey, it's going to be Texas, right? So I can be ready." When he told me he's not visiting Alabama, he's coming back for the Texas visit, I'm like, "Wait a second, dude, you're committing August 15th or in mid-August at that." He didn't tell me the date at that point, but you're committing before your senior season starts is what he had told me. And I said, "But you're planning on coming back for a Texas official visit?" I said, "That's a pretty good indicator." I felt like I didn't really need to ask him, "Hey, between you and me, is it going to be Texas?" So maybe I'll try to firm up that confirmation, but the tea leaves seem to be indicating Texas pretty strongly. Like you said, man, another big win out of the state of Louisiana. LSU wanted this kid. His dad played at LSU, but he has really no interest in LSU. I've never asked him about that. I did ask him once, if LSU was in the picture, and he was like, "Nah, not really." He didn't go into any detail. Has he ever talked to you, or I know you've talked to his dad? Have they ever told you why LSU is not much of a factor there?
No, nothing, in particular, but I think it probably has something to do with, he goes to high school in Baton Rouge. His dad played at LSU. It might just be something he wants to experience, something new. That's the only thing I can probably think of outside of maybe not liking staff or, bad experience or anything like that. But maybe he just wants to spread his own wings, so to speak, get out of the state. And Texas is pretty good option to do just that.
Yeah, and it's obviously close enough where he can make that drive pretty
Mm.
consistently. He did tell me, in fact, now that I speak this out loud, he said, "Hey, Texas has been with him since day one, and that means a lot to
Mhm.
him. The relationship and the fact that they've had
Yeah.
faith with him, and a lot of schools now have come on board when they've kind of seen him progress. Well, Texas was an early evaluation and recruited him pretty heavily from the jump. I don't
Mm.
think the previous LSU staff even offered him, if I'm not mistaken. So the new staff did, but LSU is kind of behind there. So good job. You mentioned Terry Joseph and the
Yeah.
Texas staff. Good job in evaluation and just making him feel like a priority. And we think it's going to pay off on Monday. Cole, I want to transition a little bit here. And this is kind of rumor and hearsay and gossip and speculation, if you will. But Kel Gundy, the Oklahoma wide receiver coach, who's been there for like probably as long as you've been alive almost, he steps down on Sunday night, I believe it was. He formally announced his resignation. Texas fans immediately say, "Hey, can Texas go out and get Jaquez Petaway? Does that impact anybody else?" My thoughts are it's probably a little too early to tell. Yeah, we've kind of heard some rumblings maybe that, Petaway may want to take a step back and not reconsider, but reevaluate things. And he doesn't even know who his position coach is going to be. So, surely he's going to have to reevaluate things. But my perspective, it's probably a little too early. I mean, Texas fans want to pencil Petaway into this class all of a sudden, a guy that
Yeah.
picked Oklahoma over Texas in a head-to-head win for OU. So I know people are wondering, and I have not heard any concrete evidence that makes me think Petaway is suddenly going to renew a strong interest to Texas. Would it shock me if it happens, in the coming weeks or months? Not necessarily, but I haven't heard anything this quickly in 48 hours after that announcement that makes me think some kind of commitment flip is happening. I mean, I'm assuming you're the same, but any thoughts on that situation, Cole?
Yeah, I mean, I actually talked to someone that has pretty good read on Petaway and his recruitment. Then there is some. He wants to see who Oklahoma hires. Obviously, what happens there. He obviously is probably not the biggest fan of Gundy not being his coach anymore. I just talking to who I talked to. I don't get the sense Texas would be the destination right now. If he was going to make a flip immediately, I think LSU would probably try to get involved. But who knows? I mean, it's gonna be a long way to signing day. Texas is right there in the mix, so we'll see what happens there. Obviously, I'm sure we'll get to it. They're after Jalen Hill in a pretty big way. There's only a limited amount of spots at receiver, but yeah, we'll see what happens there. I mean, he's still committed to Oklahoma. We'll see what he decides to do, if he decides to open it up pretty soon, if he wants to take it to signing day. So I wouldn't expect Texas to be the pick right now if he were to flip, but a long way to signing day, and they're obviously right there in the thick of things throughout its recruitment. So something we'll monitor for sure.
And similar, Bravion Rogers, who decommits from Texas A&M, and getting pounded with questions like, is he going to flip to Texas? Because Jeff Ketchum posted in his column on Sunday night that he's heard some rumblings of a very early rumblings. Let me clarify, but a guy that might be considering a flip. And everybody assumed then, I think was it last night that
Yeah,
Bravion Rogers decommits, right, Cole? Monday night. So everybody assumed that's
yeah.
who Ketch was talking about. And Ketch was like, no, no, no. And then I got a text from a totally independent source from anyone Ketchum talked to, kind of hearing the same rumblings that Ketch heard. So it's definitely a situation we're monitoring, a potential flip. Again, man, I'm kind of writing about this for my Q&A tonight. And this one could very well fizzle out. We'll keep an eye on it, but it's so preliminary. But I would say that this particular recruit, there's some question marks in his head. Okay, so is he going to
Mm,
flip his commitment? I don't know, but Bravion Rogers is not the player we're talking about. He decommits from Texas A&M. We'll see if Texas gets involved there. When I talked to Bravion, Cole, it was at Texas Relay, so we're literally on the Texas campus,
yeah.
and he just didn't seem to have. I mean, he liked Texas, but there was nothing about his comments or his body language or his words or expressions that made me think Texas was in a better spot than anybody else. He was pretty open at that time. A&M offered him, and he committed a couple days after that offer. I don't even know, it was a couple days. It was right after he got the A&M offer. So a bit surprising development to see him open up his commitment and decommit from A&M. I don't know that Texas would be the choice. There's some scuttlebutt about LSU maybe being involved there, but again, a situation we'll monitor. But for people who are wondering if he might be a guy that just immediately flips to Texas, that would surprise me a little bit. Cole, I want to finish this. I mentioned I'm working on a Q&A for Orange Bloods tonight, touching on all kinds of recruiting topics. I always have the subscribers, they either email me or just DM me or post messages or post questions on our message board. So I'll have a Q&A on there coming later tonight on Tuesday. I'm going to pull out of that mailbag and I'm going to ask you a few questions and just see if our answers kind of match up. So first question, Cole, this one's kind of tricky, man. I mean, it says outside of Cedric Baxter, Jordan Matthews, who we talked about, Jalen Hill, you touched on briefly. Jalen Hill is supposed to announce his decision September 22nd, maybe earlier than that, but September 22nd is the date he stated. Outside of those three, if forced to choose which remaining recruit would you say is most likely to join this Texas class? It gets hard after those three. I mean, it's hard to pick someone. I've got someone in mind that I wrote about, but anybody that jumps into your head?
Yeah, it is tough, you know, that there's limited spots, and obviously that's 3 more spots that we can't choose from. So definitely a difficult question. But I mean, 2 guys that I think come to my mind. One is it really just depends how many receivers they take, and that would be Mikhail Harrison-Pilot. If they're willing to take another 5th receiver in addition to Hill, you know, Hill would be the 4th, obviously. If they're willing to take 5 receivers, Mikhail Harrison-Pilot could be the choice there. The other one, I guess, would be Marcus Deal out of Garland Newman Forest. You know, he was just on the Texas campus. It's kind of an interesting recruitment. You know, a lot of people think he would be, you know, arguably a 5-star prospect on the offensive line. Probably more programs would be even more involved in his recruitment. But he wants to play defensive line, and Bo Davis built a good relationship there. You know, TCU's involved. I think Georgia is still recruiting him. I think those 2, unless I'm missing somebody, you know, crazy, I think those 2 are the ones that jump to my mind, at least immediately.
Well, you know what? As usual, we're on the same page. I already answered that question in my Q&A, and I went with Marcus Deal. Yeah, Marcus Deal is my choice. He is visiting Georgia. It's September. I don't remember the exact date. I put it in his Rivals profile. So he's taking an official visit to Georgia. So he has one more official, Cole. I talked to Marcus late last week, and it's either going to be Texas or Oklahoma for that last official visit. So you've got to think that'll be pretty telling. I mean, I think Texas has to get him for that official visit. But if that happens, you know, I'm not even sure I'd call Texas the outright leader for Marcus Deal right now. That's how hard it is to predict that next commitment. But he's a guy that I think could certainly trend Texas's way. He visited for the pool party. He may take that official visit to Texas for his 5th and final official visit. So Marcus Deal would be my pick there, but I'd say pretty low confidence on picking the next most likely. So
difficult question.
It is a good question, which it's a good. That's why it's good. So this one's I think maybe a little easier, but it's pretty kind of just yes or no answer. So in the 2024 class, does Texas commitment Aaron Hampton stick with that decision, Cole, or do you think he's been a guy he's committed to Baylor before Texas. He commits to Texas. He says, hey, I'm still going to take other visits. He released 7 or 8 schools he wanted to visit. So do you think Aaron Hampton, currently Texas commitment, sticks with that decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron Hampton's a guy he's going to enjoy the process. You know, he's going to take visits. He took visits this summer. You know, saw A&M, saw LSU, and there's a lot of programs involved. You know, Alabama offered him in the spring, so he's a top 50 player in the nation for that class. But I do think he's going to stick. You know, every time I talk to him, every time I check in with him, he seems pretty locked in. You know, he has a great relationship with Sarkisian. You know, Blake Gideon's done a good job recruiting him. And it seems like they're pretty open to letting him play where he wants to play. You know, he initially wanted to play DB. You know, he said that they wanted him as a Buda Baker kind of player, is what he kept telling me. And now he's kind of wanting to play offense. So we'll see what happens there when he gets to campus. But, yeah, I mean, I think unless something, you know, he always tells me unless Sark leaves or potentially if Gideon were to get a different job, maybe something opens up. But, you know, I think Sark's the glue that's holding that together. And, you know, I think he's going to enjoy the process. He might make Texas fans sweat a little bit. He'll probably take some visits and everything like that and, you know, take advantage of the opportunities. But I do think he will stick with Texas.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, when I talked to him most recently, I guess it would have been late June, I think, was at the State 7-on-7. And he said he then was maybe leaning a little slightly towards offense. And he admitted, he goes, hey, the fact that they got Arch Manning, that makes that a hell of a lot more attractive. And he said exactly what you said, Cole. He said, unless Sark leaves or some of these other position coaches leave, he goes, I'm not going anywhere. So like you, would it shock me if he took official visits to other places? No. But as it stands right now, I would predict him to stick with Texas. All right, Cole, last one here, and then we will put a bow on this sucker. So, and Rivals has their recruiting meetings, rankings meetings coming up this week. Cole, you'll be involved in those. So maybe don't give away too much, maybe, but it says which commitment is most underrated rankings-wise, and which one or ones have potential for ratings bumps in the future. So of the Texas commitments, who do you personally feel is underrated and who might be able to get a ratings bump?
Yeah, that's tough on underrated because there's so many factors that go into it. I do think one guy to watch, at least during the season, for a rankings bump, and you can think he's underrated right now as well, is Trevor Gooseby. You know, he's a really athletic kid. He committed to Texas in the summer, hit a really good big growth spurt. I'm not sure if he gets that 4-star or not this next update, but I think he's a guy that everybody on the Rivals team knows is very aware, is very intrigued about, and I do think he is underrated. It'll be interesting how he plays tackle this year. You know, with a more weight, more size to his frame. I do think he's a guy that's worth watching and a little bit underrated in my opinion. I think Connor Stroh's another guy, kind of same offensive line, same position as far as playing on the offensive line with Kyle Flood. He'll probably play interior on the next level, but regardless of where he plays, I think he will get another bump as well. You know, he was a 4-star and then dropped down, and we'll see what happens there. But he's a big kid, a mauler of a player. He still learning some of the nuances playing tackle and things like that. But he plays with a lot of strength. He's a really good run blocker. So I think those are two guys right there. And as far as bumps, probably the more notable guys are already highly recruited guys, highly rated guys. But that would be Jonte Cook and Malik Muhammad are two guys I think you could see continuing to rise. Obviously, Catch, always talks about the differences between a 6'0" and a 5'9". Malik Muhammad's a 5'9". I could see him definitely moving up to that next tier. And Jonte Cook's making a really big push to be a 5-star receiver by the time he signs with Texas. And then as far as targets go, I think, Jalen Hill is a player worth watching as well. He had a really big UA50 Futures game or performance down in, I think that was Orlando, last month, performed really well there. So I think it covered a couple of different guys. But, yeah, I think Texas fans will probably be happy with the next update, and continuing to see how these guys develop throughout the season will be interesting to follow.
Who are you kidding, Cole? They could move 10 guys could move up in the rankings and one guy drops. The fans will only focus on the one guy that drops. So those are all good names. I'd almost be surprised if Trevor Gooseby didn't wind up being a 4-star at some point. Makes sense if it doesn't happen until the fall when you get a chance to, you and everybody else gets a chance to really evaluate him in person his senior year, because his body's changed so much. And this is a guy that A&M really wanted. Obviously, he was committed to TCU. They do a good job with their evaluations. Kyle Flood made him a priority at Texas. So once he kind of got to reevaluate him, and I do like the Connor Stroh pick too. This was a guy that was a Rivals 250 guy at one point. Yeah. Now he's a 3-star. Connor, I didn't realize this, but when I talked to him recently, last year, I'm drawing a blank. He had an injury, and I can't think of what it was. I'd have to go through my notes, but he didn't get. Basically, he just came in August, was able to start participating again. So he didn't have a spring season. He didn't really have even a fall camp that much to kind of get acclimated. He just never. He told me, he said, I never really felt 100% all during his junior year last year. So he's transformed his body. He's healthy. He's had spring football. He's obviously got summer camp that he's going, or fall camp that he's going through. So I think Connor Stroh has a chance to really make some strides from what he showed as a junior and maybe get back to that 4-star status as well. So good answers. As usual, we are in line. And I would also offer, if we're talking uncommitted guys, you mentioned him earlier, I think Cedric Baxter. When I look at that guy's film, I'm like, that dude's running back film looks as good as anybody's I've seen in this.
It's like a video game.
Yeah, it is. So, I think Cedric Baxter should make a move up, and Counting on you, Cole, to throw your weight around in those ranking meetings this week.
I'll see what I can do.
All right, man. So, all right, with that, Cole, I think we'll put a bow on this one. As I said, this has been the CruitCast. I'm Jason Sukamel, joined as always by my man Cole Patterson. Like the videos, subscribe to the channel. Prime Shrimp, you see it up at the top. Get your $20 off your first order. Promo code Orange Bloods. And as I mentioned earlier, lemon and cracked pepper, new flavor coming out. Guys, it's all delicious. Oh, man, I am too. So be anxiously awaiting the arrival of that, and we'll be bragging on that as soon as we try it, I'm sure. So appreciate everybody watching. Everybody have a great week, Cole. We'll be back probably early next week, if not before, to maybe break down the Cedric Baxter commitment. Who knows? Maybe break down Jordan Matthews, depending on when we're recording. And, you know, teams are in fall camp right now. The Texas coaches are busy with what they've got going on. High school everybody started practicing yesterday, but recruiting never ends, does it, my man? It's a never ending. Yeah. All right, my man. Well, have a good day. Everybody, appreciate y'all giving us some time. Everybody have a great week, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.